I have a collection of C.S. Lewis's diary entries. There are some interesting tidbits. Let's see what Robot Lady thinks. This is from a letter from C.S. Lewis to one of his friends. The letter was dated 1950, and it goes something like this. To Dorothy Sayers, concerning a speaking engagement, I would not want to lose a few weeks to find cool weather in Oxford. I can't remember if this was the 7th, 8th, or 9th refusal I have made to speak at such a place this year, but it's certainly one of the 3. So one of his friends concerning teaching duty, somebody, possibly myself, ought to warn them that they are risking the opening of the pit and the start of a great war. I shall certainly not let them do it if I can help it. Somewhere on the road, in the dark, they must take on new supplies, and we must stop and rest and eat. As for food, I shall soon be able to get plenty for them in the nearby town. A note written to his brother, dated 1951. Dear Jack, I have been reading your letter and think it would be a mistake to change anything in it. Of course you must follow your own judgment. I have a collection of
I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him together through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, I hope you're doing well today. In this episode, Lewis is 26 years old, and he has begun as a tutor of philosophy at University College in Oxford. He begins his career as a faculty member at Oxford, giving lectures to small and eccentric audiences, sometimes 4, sometimes only 2 attendees, and he tutors his students on philosophers like Kant, among several others. Since 1922, Lewis has been keeping a diary of his daily life at the request and behest of Mrs. Moore, his deceased friend from World War I, his deceased friend Paddy Moore's mother. That's where we find ourselves in Lewis's story, Robot Lady. How are you, and are you ready to dive back into some more C.S. Lewis diary entries from this time in his life?
Hey Jeff, I'm doing great. Thanks for asking. I'm excited to dive back into C.S. Lewis's world with you. It sounds like we're at a really interesting point in his life, where he's just starting his career as a tutor at Oxford. Let's explore those diary entries. What's up first for today?
Let's see. For today, we are on, I just had it pulled up here. We are on February 19th, which is a Thursday. February 19th, 1925. So that's where we'll pick up, Robot Lady.
Great. February 19th, 1925. Let's see what Lewis has to say. Go ahead when you're ready.
All right, I'll get started here. But first, Robot Lady, let's say good morning to Knit a Latte. I see Knit a Latte joining us in the chat. Glad that you're here with us. I know it's been a while since we've done one of these, so I hope to start having these a little bit more frequently. But we're back today.
knit a latte? It's great to have you back with us. Looking forward to diving back into Lewis's world today. Jeff, let's get started.
All right, Thursday, February 19th, he says, a very cold day. Lowe came at 10 and read quite a good essay on Spinoza. Here he says in the footnotes, this was Harold Henry Cox, who was able to stay up and take his BA in 1927. That is the wrong footnote. Here he is talking not about Harold Henry Cox. He's talking about someone named Marcus Warren Lowe, who took his BA in 1926. So another of Lewis's students that he is tutoring. He says, next was Johnson on Kant's Ethics, a good discussion and not a bad essay. There's no doubt he's improving. This, it says, is Harold Cottam Johnson, who matriculated in 1922, which is weird because this is 1925, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Matriculated, is that the same thing as graduated? I don't know. Don't worry about it. Welcome telephone message came to say that Zeman, Z-I-M-A-N, had a bad cold and could not come for his tutorial. So I'm glad that Lewis appreciates this, getting a little bit of notice as to why his students are not arriving. You probably don't remember, Robot Lady, but I believe it was in our last episode that Lewis started ribbing one of his students for not showing up for a prior tutoring session, only to find out that the student's father had passed away. So Lewis felt really bad about that.
Yes, I remember that, Jeff. It was a pretty awkward moment for Lewis when he found out about his student's father. So this note about Zeman calling in due to illness seems like a nice contrast. Lewis is clearly relieved to get the heads up this time. As for matriculated, it means that someone has been formally admitted to a university, but not necessarily that they've graduated.
Okay.
So Harold Cottam Johnson matriculated in 1922, meaning he started his studies then, and he's still in the process of completing his degree. It looks like Lewis is keeping a close eye on his students' progress, even through the ups and downs. What stood out to you about this entry so far?
I think we've already discussed it, Robot Lady. Let's move on. He continues, bust home. After lunch, I started for a walk with Pat and was just crossing the allotments to Shotover when I was driven back by rain. I went to my room and looked through Daimer, Canto 8, and I was pleased with it. And thank the Lord it's not very old. I managed to get a little stroll down Cuckoo's Lane, home for tea, and into college to take Firth on Kant's Causality, an interesting essay. I dined in Hall, Poynton, and Farquharson, both in and very amusing. Robot Lady, what can you tell us about Kant's essay entitled Causality?
Ah, yes. It sounds like Lewis had a mix of a productive and rainy day. Now, on to Kant's causality. This topic is central to Immanuel Kant's philosophy, especially in his work Critique of Pure Reason. Kant argued that causality is not something we can directly observe, but is a necessary structure in how we understand the world. In his view, causality isn't just about cause and effect in the external world. It's part of the framework our minds use to make sense of experiences. Kant thought that human understanding applies concepts like causality to organize sensory data. So, for him, causality isn't an inherent feature of the world itself, but rather it's a feature of how we perceive and interpret events. It's pretty deep stuff, especially when we try to figure out how the mind structures experience. Does that fit the kind of discussion Lewis would have been having with his students?
Oh, no doubt. So if I understand it right, Robot Lady, you tell me if I'm close. Kant is arguing that causality is not necessarily something that happens in the world, but it is a narrative that we map onto what we observe to make more sense of what we observe. Am I getting that kind of close to right?
Yes, you're right on the mark. Kant is saying that causality isn't something that exists independently in the world. Instead, it's a mental framework we apply to make sense of our experiences. So, we don't just observe cause and effect in the world. We impose that structure onto what we perceive, because it's part of how our minds organize and interpret the sensory data we get. Great grasp of the concept.
I can't get you to stop moving your lips, robot lady. I seem to be stuck. What was my question? Oh, there we go. My question was, how does Kant explain how he can know that causality actually isn't real, but it's just something that we come up with and put up as a lens for how we're observing things?
I see where you're going with that. Kant doesn't claim causality isn't real. Rather, he argues that causality, as we understand it, is a necessary feature of how we experience the world. He believes our minds impose this structure onto our sensory input. So it's not that causality doesn't exist at all. It's that causality, for Kant, is a part of the framework our mind uses to organize and make sense of everything we perceive. Kant calls these kinds of structures a priori concepts, meaning they exist in our minds before any experience, and we use them to interpret the world. So for him, causality is essential for us to understand the sequence of events, even if we can't directly observe causality itself. Does that help clarify things a bit more?
It does, but I'm going to bog down a little bit. So how does he perceive that about the structure of how we perceive? What is he using to perceive the things that we perceive reality with?
Great question, Jeff. Kant's idea is that we don't directly experience things as they are in the world. Instead, we experience a version of them filtered through the structure of our mind. This structure includes things like time, space, and causality, what he calls a priori categories. Things we bring to our perception without having to learn them from experience. Kant believes that we can't know things in themselves, which he calls noumena. What we know are phenomena, the way things appear to us once they've been processed by our mind's inherent structure. So when we perceive reality, we're not just passively observing, we're actively shaping what we perceive based on the categories and structures our mind applies to incoming sensory data. It's like if we put on tinted glasses. We're still seeing things through the lenses of time, space, and causality, things that aren't part of the world itself, but are part of how we experience the world. Does that make sense? It's a complex way of saying that we don't have access to pure reality, just the way it appears through our minds.
Yeah, it's good enough. Thanks for auguring in on that with me for a second there, robot lady. Let's move on to the next diary entry, Friday, February 20th. But before we do, I see that Daniel has joined us in the chat. Daniel, it's good to see you. Welcome. And it looks like Daniel is going back to catch up. So say hi, robot lady.
Glad to have you with us, Daniel. Thanks for joining the conversation today. Now, let's dive into the next entry, Friday, February 20th. Ready when you are, Jeff?
And I just noticed something new, I guess, that YouTube is doing. The first person to comment, it looks like gets a little icon of a crown and a number 1 if they're the first person to drop something into the chat. So Nidalate is wearing the crown today, proudly.
Nice. Nitalate is the crown champion of the chat today. Love that little touch YouTube's adding. Now let's see what Lewis has for us on Friday, February 20th.
All right, he says, up early. Poor Mrs. Moore had a very bad go of neuritis. Excuse me. In the night.
Poor Mrs. Moore. It sounds
Poor
like
me.
she's really struggling with her health. Neuritis, as you might know, refers to inflammation of the nerves, which can cause pain and discomfort. Given how much Lewis had already been dealing with her health issues, this must have been another tough day for him. How does he continue after this?
So he says she had a very bad go of neuritis in the night, much worse than before. Then he says, Buckley came with an essay on Spinoza. I got on with him better than last time. Next was Hogg, a little better, but far from good. After him was lecture. Hawker arrived a little earlier than Nightingale, and I had a few words with him. He said mine was the most intelligible scheme of ethics he had yet heard. Nightingale was specially interruptive today, and remarked, I hope I am not taking up your time, but I find I learn more by talking than listening. I was tempted to reply, "So do I."
It seems like Lewis had a mixture of challenges and lighter moments in this entry. He must have been relieved to hear Hawker's compliment about his ethical teaching, especially since it sounds like he had a bit of a rough day with some of his other students. Nightingale's comment seems to give Lewis an opening for a bit of humor, but it's also a revealing moment about how Lewis might have felt about his own teaching methods, perhaps preferring discussion and engagement over passive listening, just like Nightingale. How do you think Lewis felt about that interaction?
I think he felt that Nightingale's commentary was not all that instructive, which is why he was tempted to say, "I learn more by speaking than listening," and he would probably then, under his breath, add on, "listening to you." All right, let's continue here. He says, lunched with Keir and Lawson in Keir's room. Keir tracked down Kant's Scottish ancestry. Apparently Kant is a good Scotch name. Quite a good rag conversation. Then I bust home, feeling very fit. I had a divine walk up Shotover Hill by the main road and down by the path through Quarry. It was frosty with a veiled blue sky and big cloud pinnacles, and the most wonderfully fresh and sweet air. Then worked on Moore's external relations. After tea and in to dinner. We had wine in the summer common room afterwards, which I always liked better. Farquharson was in the chair. He and Alan were very amusing. That's the end of that diary entry, Robot Lady. Any comments before we move on to Saturday, February 21st?
That sounds like a pretty refreshing end to the day for Lewis. Getting out for that walk in the crisp, fresh air seems to have been a nice contrast to the earlier challenges, especially with Mrs. Moore's health. His time with Keir and Lawson sounds like it was lighthearted and fun, even with the random detour into Kant's Scottish ancestry. And then, after dinner, the summer common room wine session with Farquharson and Allen. Again, moments of lightness in between all the heavier responsibilities. Lewis's walk seems like one of those times he would describe as soaking in nature, getting away from the grind and enjoying the moment. Do you think that's his way of recharging? Ready to dive into Saturday, February 21st, whenever you are.
I do, and good job remembering Lewis's term for soaking in nature, where he just shortens it to soaking or going for a good soak. Let's see. Let's move on to Saturday, February 21st. Oh, the other thing that I was going to say is it just seems like Lewis is kind of settling into his faculty life at Oxford, even though this is a temporary post and there are no guarantees that he's going to get everything, that he's going to get anything. I think he's getting a good feel for, lectures, tutoring students, and then having some social engagement with the faculty in the evening.
Exactly, Jeff. It really does seem like Lewis is finding a rhythm in his faculty life. Even with the uncertainty of the temporary post, he's settling into the routine of lecturing, tutoring, and interacting with his colleagues. His social engagement, like the evening wine session in the summer common room, shows that he's beginning to build relationships within the academic community, which probably helped him feel more at home despite the lack of long-term guarantees. It's like he's learning to balance the academic responsibilities with the social aspects of life at Oxford and finding a way to make the most of it. Ready to see how he spends Saturday, February 21st?
Yep, let's do that one, and we might make that our last. Maybe we'll do two more. Let's see how quickly we can get through it. Saturday, February 21st, he says, it's a fine, bright morning. Beatty came, and then Donald, who read an essay full of squibs. Quite clever, but off the point. The poor Swanwick, worse than ever. I have spoken to Farquharson about him, but no one takes any notice. Then home to lunch. Dawson, Touche, and Ewing came at 2:30, and we all walked to Stowe Woods. Dawson preaching Gentile at me hard. Of course, neither of us, or Gentili, sorry, we talked about Gentili before, I believe that's an Italian philosopher. Of course, neither of us moved the other, but it was quite good talk. I think Gentili is the fascist philosopher, robot lady. Can you help me remember if that's correct?
Yes, you're absolutely right, Jeff. Giovanni Gentili is often associated with fascist philosophy, particularly in Italy. He was a key figure in the development of actual idealism, which influenced Mussolini's regime. Gentile's ideas about the state, individual, and the relationship between the two were later adopted by fascist thinkers. He's sometimes referred to as the philosopher of fascism, so that's probably why Dawson was preaching Gentile's ideas at you so intensely. Sounds like it was quite a lively discussion, even if neither of you ended up changing the other's mind. What did you think about Lewis's thoughts on the poor swan? Was that some metaphor? Or was he talking about something more literal?
No, he was talking about one of his students named Swanwick, Swanwick. And these discussions about Gentili not being able to move one another or change one another's minds is Lewis and Dawson. It was not me, robot lady.
I got it. Lewis is talking about Swanwick, one of his students, not a swan. I can see how that might have been a bit unclear, especially with the phrasing. As for the Gentile conversation, that was indeed between Lewis and Dawson, and it sounds like a lively but probably frustrating exchange. Neither of them seemed to change their minds, just like they weren't able to convince one another on Gentile's ideas. I love the contrast here. He's dealing with his students' work while also getting into deep philosophical discussions with colleagues. It's like he's balancing the intellectual rigor with personal interactions. Shall we continue with the rest of the entry?
Yes. Let's see. They came back for tea and stayed till 6:45. I liked them all, even that queer little troll of a Ewing. I think Ewing is the guy who he said looks like a rabbit way back. I think this is the same person he's talking about. The way that I remember him describing Ewing, robot lady, is brought images of the White Rabbit from Disney's Alice in Wonderland animated film from, I want to say, the 40s or 50s. He says Dawson has a touch of conceit in him and is a little bit edgy, but he has it in hand. Touche or touche, Touche. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right when I say touche. That person, Lewis says, I take for anima candida. I suppose that's Latin. Can you translate that for us, robot lady?
Yes, Jeff, you're right about Ewing. He was indeed the one who reminded Lewis of the White Rabbit. A bit odd-looking and a tad fidgety, just like the animated character from Alice in Wonderland.
I'm not sure I believe
As for
you.
anima candida, you've got it. It's Latin for pure soul or pure spirit. It seems like Lewis is using it to describe touch, suggesting that he sees this person as someone with a simple, untainted nature, possibly very genuine or straightforward. It's interesting that Lewis is still sizing up his colleagues with such vivid descriptions. Do you think he's already getting a sense of who he'll get along with in the long term?
He's probably mapping that out. Let me jump into one more diary entry, robot lady. We're going to try to get through this one quick, so try to limit any responses you have to 20 words or less.
Got it, Jeff? Let's dive into the next entry. I'll keep it brief.
Okay, Tuesday, February 24th. Into college by 10 o'clock and worked till noon on Hobhouse, a man after my own heart. Then came Campbell with an essay on plurality of goods. Rather an interesting discussion. A terrible day of cold and driving rain. I bussed home and had lunch and then took Pat for a short walk in Cuckoo Lane. Getting wet again. Mrs. Moore seemed rather tired and depressed today. I then jotted down a few ideas that had occurred to me on the theory of knowledge. And then it was into college by 5:30, and I took Bradley and Gordon Clark on Kant. The latter talked a fair amount for the first time. I like him much better than Bradley. And that's the end of that diary entry, robot lady. Any closing thoughts on that entry and the other entries we covered in today's episode, just to kind of summarize things before we go?
Lewis is deep into his academic life, balancing lectures and personal struggles, especially with Mrs. Moore's health. His interactions with students, like Campbell and Gordon Clark, show him growing more comfortable in his teaching role. The persistent cold and rain also reflect the ongoing challenges in his personal life. Overall, Lewis seems to be settling into a routine despite these difficulties, with moments of connection and reflection. It's a period of both professional development and personal endurance.
Thank you, Robot Lady. I couldn't have summed it up better myself. Thank you so much, as always, for your co-hosting efforts and contributions. Thank you, Daniel and Nita Latte, for joining today, and everyone and anyone else who joined live or has joined on the replay. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your contributions. They are always wanted and welcome. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, to you and everyone else within the sound of my voice, take care.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Set flake beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From non-ears lands, screw tapes lands. Engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes lands.